I stared at the creamy off-white envelope, my fingers tracing over the ornate calligraphy spelling out my name. An invitation to my cousin Lila's wedding. How exciting! I tore it open eagerly, pulling out the embossed card. My eyes immediately narrowed as I read the groom's name, Trent Harper. An odd coincidence that his name was so close to my husband Trenton's. I shrugged it off and scanned the details, the Ritz-Carlton in Scottsdale on June 12th. A rush of cold dread washed over me as I realized that was the same weekend and location as Trenton's supposed corporate retreat. I felt my heart pounding as suspicion crept in. Trenton had been vague about the details, giving me nothing but a tight smile when I asked about the retreat's agenda. What if this was no coincidence at all? A knot formed in my stomach as I made a decision. I needed to investigate further. That evening, as Trenton was absorbed in the game on TV, I nonchalantly grabbed his phone under the pretext of playing another round of Wordle. With a few deft taps, I opened his messages, my mouth going dry at what I found. Texts from Julie S., filled with terms of endearment and plans for a future together, disguised as business meetings. The blood drained from my face as the full, ugly truth unveiled itself before me. My husband, the man I had loved and trusted for 12 years, was having an affair and apparently planning to marry his mistress on the very weekend he had claimed to be away on business. White-hot anger bubbled up inside me, quickly smothered by an icy resolve. If Trenton wanted to ruin our vows and mock our marriage, I would make sure the whole world witnessed his deceit. Jaw clenched, I began meticulously plotting my revenge. With shaking hands, I dialed the number for the Ritz-Carlton's wedding planner listed on the invitation. Taking a deep breath to calm my ragged nerves, I put on my most cheerful voice as the line connected. "Hello, I'm calling to confirm some details for my cousin Lila's wedding to Trent Harper on June 12th, I began, forcing a casual lilt into my tone. The planner responded politely, "Certainly, ma'am. Let me pull up those details." There was a tense pause as she typed away, each click of the keyboard like a hammer striking my heart. "Ah, yes, the Harper wedding. We have the ceremony booked for 4 p.m. on the Grand Lawn." My mouth went dry as she unwittingly confirmed my worst fears. I swallowed hard. Wonderful. And just to double-check, that's for the bride, Julie Saunders, and groom, Trent Harper? There was an agonizing few seconds of silence before the planner's voice returned, dripping with confusion. "No, ma'am. We have Trenton Harper and Julie Saunders as the couple." The phone nearly slipped from my hand at those words. Trenton, not Trent. It was my husband's name listed plain as day as the soon-to-be groom. "Ma'am? Are you still there?" Anger crushed any ability for a coherent response. With a shuddering exhale, I ended the call, vision blurring with tears of rage and humiliation. That night, Trenton breezed through the door at his usual time, pressing a distracted kiss to my cheek. "Hey, babe, sorry for the late night. Just had to put out some fires for the Watson account." I said nothing, simply staring at him with hollow eyes. He frowned slightly at my stoic silence. "Everything okay?" In that moment, something inside me hardened into diamond-sharp resolution. "Everything's fine," I replied tonelessly. "Just get some rest for your big work trip this weekend." The lie slid off his tongue with insulting ease. "You know how these corporate retreats are, all work and no play, but it'll be worth it to land the Collingsworth deal." I nodded vacantly, focusing on not letting my fury betray itself. Not yet. He would get his comeuppance soon enough, and the entire world would see his true, deceitful nature laid bare. As he headed to take a shower, I picked up my phone again. This time, fingers trembling, I entered a number I had hastily scribbled down earlier, taking another fortifying breath. "Hello, Lila. It's me." I paused, acutely feeling the first ripping pang of my world crashing down around me. "We need to talk." Lila showed up at my door bright and early the next morning, her face drawn and pale. "I can't believe this is happening," she whispered as I ushered her inside. I shook my head grimly. "Believe it. That no-good snake is marrying his mistress this weekend while lying to both of our faces." Lila slumped onto the couch, burying her face in trembling hands. "How could he do this to you, to his own family?" She looked up at me with reddened eyes. "What are you going to do?" A hard glint entered my stare. "I'm going to make sure the whole world sees what a deceitful, disloyal piece of scum he really is." I began pacing as the details came together in my mind. We're going to that wedding, and we're crashing it in a big way. Lila's brow furrowed. You mean, go there and expose him? In front of everyone? Exactly. I whirled to face her, fists clenched. He wants to make vows to another woman behind my back? Well, I'll make sure those sacred vows are shattered into a million pieces before they're even said. The shock on Lila's face slowly melted into an expression of grim determination. She straightened, giving a solemn nod. You're right. That lying, cheating scumbag deserves to have his true colors shown for all to see. Her lips tightened into a thin line. I'm in. Let's take that jerk down. A feral smile spread across my face at her vehement agreement. Good, I'm going to need your help tracking down more details about this Julie woman he's marrying. I grabbed a notepad, scribbling down her name from the texts I'd seen, Julie Saunders. See what you can find out, where she works, her background, etc. Lila nodded resolutely. Consider it done. Meanwhile, I continued, I'm going to work an angle of my own. I picked up my phone and scrolled through contacts until I found the number for an interior design studio I had toured a few months back. After a couple rings, a chipper voice answered. Ambiance Design Studio. This is Julie speaking. My blood went cold at the saccharine tone. This was her, the woman who was knowingly going to become my husband's mistress. Steadying my voice into polite warmth, I replied, Hi there, Julie. This is Nadia Harper, an interior designer as well. I was hoping to pick your brain about design services. There was an audible sparkle in Julie's voice. Oh, absolutely. Always happy to chat shop with a fellow designer. What did you have in mind? A tight smile crossed my lips as the plan came together. Well, I'm helping a close friend with design consultations for her new home. She'll be moving soon after her wedding and could definitely use some professional input to make the place picture perfect for her new husband. The words dripped with acid sweetness as I delivered the final strike. Why don't we grab coffee this week, and you can tell me all about your own wedding plans? We're both pursuing that newlywed dream, after all. There was the briefest of pauses before Julie's tone returned, slightly more guarded, but still upbeat. You know what? That sounds just lovely. I'd be happy to. Wonderful, I replied with sugary venom. It's a date. As I ended the call, I caught Lila's wide-eyed stare. She shook her head slowly. Nadia, what are you going to do? My eyes were two endless pits of black. Anything I damn well please, that snake is going to wish he never slithered into my life. As the week drew to a close, the wedding date loomed menacingly closer. I had met with Julie under the guise of discussing design plans while deftly extracting more details about her impending nuptials to my husband. The sickening details of their affair and Trenton's web of lies had me seething internally. But I refused to let my anger rule me. Not yet. Cool determination propelled me forward as I began methodically preparing for the reckoning to come. Friday evening rolled around, and Trenton casually mentioned he was leaving early the next morning for his corporate retreat. I simply nodded absently, not looking up from the kitchen counter where I was prepping Mia's lunch for a sleepover at my parents' place. I'll keep Mia with me this weekend while you're gone. I lied smoothly. No need for her to be alone. He smiled obliviously. Sounds good, babe. Thanks for holding down the fort. If only he knew just how fortified my defenses truly were becoming. The next morning, I hugged Mia tightly as I dropped her off at my parents'. Have fun this weekend, okay, Pumpkin? Mommy has to take care of some work stuff. She frowned slightly at the vague explanation, but nodded. Okay, Mommy, I love you. Love you too, baby. I pressed a kiss to the top of her head, drinking in her innocent trust. No matter what happened, I would shield her from the ugliness about to unfold. With Mia safely tucked away, I made one last critical stop, my lawyer's office. Sandra Lewis had been a dear friend since law school and was one of the sharpest divorce attorneys in the state. So let me get this straight, she said slowly, after I laid out the situation. Your husband of 12 years is attempting to marry another woman behind your back this weekend? I nodded tightly. That pretty much sums up that lying snake's actions. Sandra's expression hardened. Well, we definitely have grounds for divorce filing citing infidelity and fraud. I can have the paperwork ready to go first thing Monday morning. A grim smile crossed my lips. Appreciate it, Sandra. Just one more thing. I leaned forward intently. What are the legal parameters for me potentially crashing said wedding? I have no intention of being quiet or discreet about this. She arched one meticulously groomed eyebrow. As long as you don't do anything that could be deemed as threatening or violent, you're well within your rights to make a scene on private property you've been invited to. Just be prepared for the fallout. My hands clenched atop her desk. Oh, I'm counting on that fallout. He wants to humiliate me and tear apart this family. He's going to reap what he's sown in front of God and everyone. A glimmer of respect shone in Sandra's gaze. In that case, you do what you need to do. I'll make sure you're protected and get everything you deserve out of this. With a sharp nod, I rose and headed for the door, squaring my shoulders. Legal preparations complete, evidence gathered. It was time to put the final masterstroke of my plan into motion. Tomorrow, Trenton Harper would learn an incredibly painful lesson about the consequences of betrayal, and the entire world would bear witness to his karmic reckoning. The Ritz-Carlton's grand lawn was a vision of elegant splendor, with rows of white chairs finely arranged before a stunning floral archway. Guests milled about in their formal finest, sipping champagne and chatting animatedly. I surveyed the scene from my carefully chosen vantage point near the back, my crimson dress striking and form-fitting. Eyes followed my every movement, confusion and stray whispers rippling through the crowd at my unexpected presence. Trenton stood at the front alongside his groomsmen, looking artificially debonair in his tailored tuxedo. The fool had no idea the reckoning headed his way like a freight train. As the music swelled and Julie began her processional, a hush fell over the assembled guests. I watched in stony silence as the beaming bride glided down the aisle, resplendent in white lace and blissful ignorance of the sins enabling this day. When she reached the archway, gently taking Trenton's hands in her own, the officiant began speaking the traditional opening words. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today." That was my cue. With a harsh, indrawn breath, I began striding forward purposefully, each click of my heels like another nail in Trenton's cheating heart. Gasps and murmurs erupted around me as I drew nearer, but I kept my eyes locked forward, a lioness zeroing in on her prey. Trenton's back was turned, but I could see the confused panic flickering across Julie's face. "What is she doing here?" she mouthed desperately at her bridesmaid beside her. By the time she turned to follow her friend's ashen gaze, I was barely 5 rows away, too late to halt my inexorable advance. Her eyes went wide with shock and fear as she finally realized the truth I represented. Trenton turned just then, his easy smile contorting into a rictus of sheer terror as he took in my presence, standing mere feet from his grand betrayal. "And Nadia," he choked out, voice scarcely above a hoarse whisper. "What are you?" My hands found my hips as I pierced him with a look of pure, scorching disdain. "What am I doing here, dear husband?" My tone could have frozen hellfire. "I'm here to make sure these farce of vows you're spewing are stopped before they leave your lying, faithless mouth." You could have heard a pin drop across that lawn as every eye bored into the erupting scene. Trenton seemed to shrink by several inches under my withering glare. "I know this looks bad," he stammered out weakly. "But there's an explanation, I swear." A bitter bark of laughter exploded from my curled lips. "An explanation? Oh, I already have that explanation. How you've been carrying on an affair with this woman here for God knows how long." I gestured contemptuously at the stricken Julie before rounding back on Trenton. "While lying to my face about business trips and corporate retreats. While betraying every single vow and ounce of trust I've placed in you for over a decade." By now, tears of shocked humiliation were streaming down Julie's pale, trembling face. Trenton seemed to gain a second wind, puffing out his chest in a sad pantomime of indignant anger. "How dare you come here and make a spectacle, Nadia? What gives you the right to ruin my—" The blistering force of my glare cut off whatever pitiful justification he was about to spew. "Your wedding?" I hissed with dripping venom. "This is a sham, you lying sack of scum. I am your lawfully wedded wife, the only one whose vows actually mean a single damn thing here." I stepped forward until I was nose to nose with the cowering weasel, uncaring of the dozens of appalled onlookers. "So congratulations, you repulsive snake," I spat with blistering finality. "Your big day is officially, utterly ruined." A ringing silence fell over the lawn as the weight of my words slammed home. Trenton's mouth worked soundlessly like a gasping fish, all bravado and righteousness drained from his face. Julie was an absolute wreck beside him, makeup streaked down her cheeks as great, heaving sobs racked her slender frame. You're married?" she eventually choked out in Trenton's direction. Betrayal twisting the knife deeper. He froze like a cornered animal, panic glazing his widened eyes. "Julie, baby, I can explain." The plaintive whisper only seemed to inflame her anguish further. "Don't you baby me, you lying piece of scum!" she wailed, fists clenched and chest heaving. "You've been playing me for a fool this entire time." I watched with a vindicated sneer as her French-tipped nails raked across Trenton's stricken face, leaving vivid red welts in their wake. A startled hush rippled through the stunned guests, witnessing the implosion. Trenton cradled his reddened cheek, mouth gaping like a beached fish. His parents and a few groomsmen rushed forward in a panic. "What is going on here?" his father barked, shooting me a venomous glare. "Who the hell are you to ruin my son's wedding like this?" The sheer audacity of the demand took me aback for only a split second before I rallied, shoulders squaring. "I'll tell you exactly who I am," I said in a tone that could have frozen a raging volcano. "Nadia Harper, your precious son's wife of 12 years. A collective gasp rose from the assembled crowd, followed by a torrent of incredulous whispers and hissed asides. Trenton's parents froze in stunned horror, his mother raising a trembling hand to her mouth. "You see," I continued, each word a merciless hammerfall, "while your boy was spinning tales of business obligations, he was really shacking up with his little mistress here." I jerked a thumb at the weeping Julie, the picture of debauched innocence in her ruined white gown. Trenton seemed to rally some semblance of spine, lurching upright with indignant fury contorting his features. "That's enough," he snarled, cutting a hand through the air as if to sever my accusations. "You've had your petty little moment of payback. Now get the hell out of here before I have you removed." There were some murmurs of assent from his groomsmen at the threat, but I simply tipped back my head with a peal of derisive baying laughter. "You'll remove me? From what, exactly? This grotesque mockery of a wedding that shouldn't even be happening?" I took a deliberate step forward, lips peeling back in a predatory smile. "No, I don't think so. Not until every last person here sees what a lying, faithless, disloyal fraud you truly are." Whirling back towards the dumbstruck guests, I raised my voice to a ringing pitch. "This man, this worm in an overpriced tuxedo, has been cheating on me, his actual legal wife and mother of his child, for months, maybe years." A sound akin to a howling gale tore through the crowd, equal parts furious condemnation and stunned gasps. Several attendants looked ill or as if they might faint dead away from sheer scandalized shock. Trenton was deathly pale, crimson splotches of rage mottling along his jaw as his fists clenched spasmodically. When he spoke again, it was through gritted teeth that only faintly masked the wretched panic leaking through. "You've made your point, Nadia. You've had your moment. Now get out before I make you regret this even more." A shrill whistle pierced the tension as Lila stepped forward, both arms raised for silence. "Everyone calm down." Her voice was strident, propelled by outrage. "In case any of you missed the fireworks, my dear cousin is the wife your precious Trenton has been lying to, cheating on, and betraying for God knows how long." She stabbed an accusing finger towards the pathetic groom. "This whole affair is a disgrace, illegal and immoral. So unless someone has something to say in defense of this scumbag, shut up and let the man's sins continue being dragged into the harsh light." Not a soul spoke up or moved an inch. Reviled silence confirmed my total victory. My eyes carved flaming trenches into the husk of the man I had once loved. "I hope you're proud of yourself," I said with quiet menace, "because I promise you'll carry the humiliation of this moment for the rest of your days." I turned and stalked away without a backward glance, my howling laughter echoing long after I had disappeared from view. The aftermath of the aborted wedding played out in slow-motion absurdity. Trenton's family rapidly dispersed, shame and anger writ large across their pinched faces as they hurried from the scene of utter humiliation. Julie was the first to depart, wails of misery echoing off the carefully manicured hedges as her bridesmaid attempted to hustle her towards a waiting car. Whether from remnant delusion or morbid curiosity, she paused to lock eyes with me one final time. "Why?" she croaked through her ruined makeup, voice little more than a shredded whisper. "Why would he do this to us?" I regarded her hollowed expression for a long moment before responding in a tone of soul-deep pity. "Because he's a selfish, lying coward who only cares about himself. You're well rid of him." Her face crumpled as fresh sobs ripped through her slender frame. I watched impassively as she was finally bundled away, the last vestige of her hopes for happily ever after dying a miserably public death. Trenton alone remained behind, slumped on one of the immaculate white chairs as the crews began packing up their elaborate staging. His head was cradled in hands I had once traced with devotion, now curled into useless, impotent claws. "How could you do this to me?" The anguished moan was scarcely audible over the bustle of deconstruction. "To Mia?" I stared at his hunched, wretched figure with not an ounce of pity to be mustered. "How could I? That's precious coming from you, you faithless sack of filth." Trenton raised his head slowly, eyes swollen and reddened from weeping like a broken child. "Nadia, please, don't." I cut him off with a lashing rebuke. "Don't you dare try playing for my sympathies after what you've done, though not after looking me in the eye for over a year and lying through your teeth every single day." His mouth worked uselessly as I shook my head in disgust. "I don't want to hear your pitiful excuses or explanations. I want action." Straightening, I pinned him with a look that could have incinerated carbon. "Starting tomorrow, you're getting divorce papers. If you know what's good for you, you'll sign them. No arguments, no contestations." Trenton blinked, some spark of defiance flickering behind his eyes. "You can't be serious, Nadia. We've been married 12 years, built a life together." "None of which seemed to matter when you were screwing your way through whatever bimbo crossed your path," I shot back with acid intensity. "So unless the only thing you want to keep from this marriage is your balls, you'll do exactly as I say." His shoulders slumped in defeat, the pitiful visage of a broken husk. And what about Mia?" Something in me twisted, like a serrated blade at the mention of my precious daughter's name. But I hardened my soul against any shred of empathy. "For her sake, I'm not going to try for full custody. Yet. You'll still be involved as her parent." I fixed him with an unyielding glare that allowed zero compromise. "But if you ever so much as think about dragging her into your cesspit of lies and infidelity, all bets are off. Understood?" There was no fight left, just a hollow nod. Spinning on my heel, I strode away without another word. My heart was a swirling maelstrom of emotions, rage and vindication. Yes, but also wrenching sadness. For the dream that my marriage had once enshrined now shattered into so many jagged shards. But those wounds would heal. They had to, if for no other reason than to preserve the one pure, beautiful joy that remained in my world. That night, I pulled Mia close and pressed a trembling kiss to her brow. "I love you, sweetie, more than you'll ever know." Whatever storms lay ahead, she would be my shelter and my light, and I would never let any harm, from her father or otherwise, taint that radiance ever again. The weeks following the aborted wedding were a whirlwind of legalities and raw emotion. True to my vow, Sandra had the divorce papers drawn up and served to Trenton with ruthless efficiency. He put up a token resistance, alternating between pathetic pleading and blustering outrage. But I was an immovable force, my resolve hardened into industrial-grade steel. "Just sign the damn papers, Trenton," I told him in a tone carved from frozen granite. "Unless you want to be left with nothing but the cheap suit on your back." His jaw worked furiously, but he offered no retort. Simply snatched the documents and stalked away like a kicked dog. I felt nothing but the faintest echo of pity watching his shrunken form retreat. The legal proceedings played out over the following months with merciful swiftness. Per my stipulations, Trenton was granted scheduled visitation with Mia, but any dreams of shared custody were summarily dashed. I steadfastly refused to expose my daughter to his parade of lies and infidelity a moment longer than absolutely necessary. He could wallow in the consequences of his own actions. As for his extramarital dalliances, the hammer fell there as well. Reports trickled back of clients abruptly canceling contracts after learning of his peccadillos, partners and colleagues swiftly distancing themselves from the toxic stain on his reputation. Turns out the universe has a way of evening the scales when you betray the most sacred vows imaginable. For me, it was a bitter sort of catharsis. The knowledge that he was suffering at least a fraction of the turmoil and pain he'd inflicted. Not that it erased the deep well of sadness and anger inside me. So many dreams and hopes, so much of my life invested into building a partnership, a family, only to have it dashed against the rocks of his selfishness and lust. It was a loss I knew would leave permanent scars, but I refused to let that loss define me or ensnare me in its undertow. I was still standing, still the master of my own destiny, and more importantly, I had an incandescent light to help guide me forward. "What you thinking about, Mommy?" Mia's cherubic face appeared beside me on the park bench, all sunshine, smiles, and uncomplicated joy. In that moment, she was my entire world, the sole reason to persevere. Gathering her into a fierce embrace, I drank in her warmth and light like a desert flower after the harshest drought. "Just about how much I love you, baby girl," I murmured, meaning every syllable, "and how proud I am of your strength during everything." She nodded solemnly, eyes too insightful for her tender years. "I know, Mommy. You did the right thing even though it was really hard." A lump formed in my throat as I regarded this incredible child. My child, born of a once beautiful dream perverted by betrayal. But she was innocent, unstained by her father's sins. "Hey," I said impulsively, pulling back with a hint of bright mischief. "What do you say we blow off the rest of the weekend and go have some fun? Just you and me?" Mia's eyes went comically wide with delight. "Really? Like a road trip? Why not?" I laughed, already feeling freer than I had in years. "We can go wherever we want, do whatever crazy thing we feel like. No school, no rules." Her squeal of unbridled glee was all the answer I needed. Springing to my feet, I scooped the giggling girl into my arms and began spinning in delirious circles amid the sprawling greenery. Our shared laughter spiraled up in peals of rebirth and renewal, banishing the lingering shadows as surely as the golden sun arsing overhead. In that moment, the past's pains and indignities held no dominion. There was only the infinite potential for new memories, new dreams, new adventures awaiting us both. A bright future awaited if we had the courage to embrace it. And in that moment, with my daughter's radiant love warming my soul from the inside out, I felt more than capable of seizing that future in both hands and never letting go.